Live from the I-10 corridor, it's the Dave Nemo Show.
Our next guest holds the Guinness World Record for the most forward flips in a wind tunnel in a single minute. Let that kind of settle in for a second while you consider your own life choices. In his former career as a professional skydiver, he's trained Navy SEALs, served as a flight instructor for Al Gore, Will Smith, Kirby Chambliss, among others. When a near-fatal car accident broke his neck in 10 places, he threw himself into rehabilitation. It was during that rehabilitation that his company Flock Goods was born during his journey through pain. Since that time, he's dedicated to helping others overcome adversity and lead active lifestyle. This is my favorite part. He's in one of our favorite states because of Rees across America. He actually lives with his beloved Dutch Shepherd dog on Maine Riverbank in a tiny house RV that he built himself. It's our pleasure to welcome the founder of flockgoods.com, Matthew Gagne. Good morning, Matt. How are you, sir?
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So you have a story of a couple of lives here because you've kept the spirit of the life you had before the accident but had to make a couple of adjustments. Let's start with your career as a professional skydiver and your deep passion for that and why it is exactly you love that so much. Why, what excites you and joneses you about that kind of active lifestyle?
Skydiving and being around skydivers for the first time. I was about 19 years old. I got a job at an indoor wind tunnel facility. So it's indoor skydiving. So I started kind of dipping my toes in the water, if you will, indoor skydiving. And being surrounded by skydivers, I was inspired. I mean, these guys weren't fearless, but they had a lot of heart and they took extreme risks and they pushed themselves and put themselves in uncomfortable positions to attain a very aggressive and grandiose goal that had physical repercussions, made them extremely vulnerable, and they did it anyway. And they had passports full of stamps to prove it. And that's what initially inspired me to leave my hometown and become a skydiver myself. And that was kind of my golden ticket, travel the world and see places all over the country. And I even lived in Dubai for several years. So it was really an amazing experience and life-shifting and changing as a whole. Just being introduced to the sport and then excelling in it over, 10 years, a long period of time.
Matt, one of the things that a lot of people, you'll hear people say, people will tell you like, what do you do? Well, I'm an engineer for Lego, or somebody will be like this travel writer with this remarkable job. I do want to point out that the kind of discipline and the kind of commitment and sacrifices to have these really kind of cool lifestyles is kind of immense, isn't it? I mean, it isn't just a matter of you get to have fun and you get a paid vacation. It's not that at all. It really is kind of keeping yourself in peak physical condition, really kind of keeping up with the trends, really making sacrifices in regards to other sorts of pleasures and fun to make sure that you, in fact, can be among those rare people that actually gets to make a living as a consultant and both an active participant in this kind of stuff as well, correct?
100%, yeah, and it fully encompasses your entire lifestyle choice. I mean, your physical fitness, your mental health, nutrition, recovery. I mean, all of those things are major variables for longevity and in the sport and really to advance if you're looking to reach a high level. And that's, I think, with any professional sport.
Yeah, so this kind of brings us to the kind of turning point, the tipping point in regards to your career and your life and your lifestyle. So can you tell us basically, you have a near-fatal car accident. Can you give us the particulars? And there's a remarkable detail in here that I've said we are now welcoming our first decapitated guest ever in the history of Dave Nemo's show. Yeah,
it's I'm fortunate that I can, I'm standing here actually on the phone talking to you now. So I'm very fortunate in that case that being kind of, I guess, a real-life Frankenstein. They bolted my head back on. I was in the Middle East. I was actually 4 days away from leaving Dubai. I had been living there 2.5 years. I was joining a fully sponsored professional skydiving team. They're actually still the world and national champions, SDC Core. They're out of Chicago. So I was 4 days away from leaving Dubai after living and working there for a year and a half. And I was actually on the way back from a range day. I used to train Navy SEALs, DOD guys. They loved flying and training in wind tunnels and skydiving. So they actually took us, myself and a couple other guys, on a range day. It was kind of a last hoorah to send me off. And it was on the way back from that, coming from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, about an hour drive through the desert. And it was nighttime, poorly lit. And I was a passenger. We took 2 cars over to the range, and on the way back, I actually swapped vehicles. The driver, I was in a Nissan Maxima, passed the FJ Cruiser that was also driving in our flock, and we went off the road. We ran out of road. It was poorly lit, desert roads in Abu Dhabi, and we didn't know the intersection was coming up, so the driver actually pulled the handbrake and started to tried to drift around the corner to make it, because slowing down wasn't an option. We were doing over 90 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. And yeah, we dropped down off the sand embankment, launched off a sand dune, rolled midair and just dropped and landed flat dead on the roof. Luckily the sand was kind of, impact absorbing. But I was, even with the seatbelt on, basically like DDT'd over the top and landed, because the car rolled towards the driver's side. So I landed right on my head, and then I was buried in the sand, fully conscious. I went out for just maybe a couple of seconds. I woke up with just loud ringing, and I can hear the driver already out of the vehicle running hysterically around the car and just screaming and crying. Thankfully, there was another vehicle. The guys that we had passed, they actually came to our rescue, and kind of, where I was buried in the sand. I'm suffocating and inhaling sand, and I can't move. So they're trying to bury my head, but it's soft desert sand in Abu Dhabi. I mean, all the sand's pouring right back into the hole as fast as they can dig it out. So they made the decision to move me. Obviously, they didn't want to move a potential spinal cord injury. At this point, we didn't know the extent of my injuries. They undid my seatbelt, pulled me by the heels just slightly to get my head out of the sand. And then it took about an hour for the ambulance to get there. In that time, I started actually moving my hands and my feet a little bit, and started getting some sensation back. And, ignorantly thought maybe, hey, I can get up, because I wasn't in much pain at that point.
Right.
But then I'm thinking in my head, okay, let's do it. We can get up, and just nothing's responding. So that's when, the cold feeling set in, like, oh no, this could be bad. And literally my immediate thought was, I'll never skydive again. It wasn't even, I won't walk again. It was, I'll never skydive again. So I sat there for about an hour for the ambulance to get there. They brought me to a first hospital, CAT scan, x-rays, decided they couldn't treat me there. This accident happened at 8:30 p.m. So they took me to a second hospital. I got to that hospital by about 2:30 a.m. That's the first time they administered any pain meds. And it didn't feel pain while I was waiting for the ambulance. As soon as they started moving me around, that's when it really set in. So that whole time, it was pretty excruciating. And then I went into an emergency surgery the next morning at 9 a.m. It was, that vividly, every detail. Waking up in the ICU, basically handcuffed. My hands were tied to the rails of my bed, and I wake up now conscious, seeing the bars in my peripheral vision of the halo that they installed onto my body. Basically, it's a portable jail cell that they conveniently screw into your skull, and it's attached to bars in a vest, so you can't move your upper spine at all.
Right.
And you wear that I wore it for about 3.5 months. I was in the hospital for a little over 4 weeks before they released me, but then they released me, and I'm in the Middle East. Mind you, I was getting ready to leave the Middle East. So I had sold my vehicle. I had sold my apartment. It was now released with someone else. I was homeless in the Middle East, and I couldn't fly. So thankfully, I had an amazing group of friends, and they made sure I was taken care of. But through that process, as much as everybody in community helped me, I had to help myself. And I dealt with the trauma massively on my own. And that is really what taught me a lot about myself, and really, shaped the man I am today.
It's funny too, because there's something kind of remarkable about your story that, we always talk about the can-do attitude, and we see movies where there are montages of recovering, and then the guy gets back and does the thing that they've always loved doing. there's a twist in this story. What ends up happening with you is that while you do actually commit yourself to a recovery, you do actually come back, you do get in the airplane, you actually do something that a lot of people who are much more foolish don't. You take inventory, correct? I mean, you take inventory of your situation, and you realize, well, I'll let you put it in your own words. Every jump is doing more damage, isn't it? Once you get recovered from this.
It was very much kind of the philosophical carrot. Getting back to the sport of skydiving was my why. That was my motivation. And that's, like I said, the philosophical carrot I used to dangle in front of myself to get me to do all of the things that I needed to in order to try to influence healing within myself. I mean, I was just kind of a maniac with everything. I had a friend who was actually a sheikah, a royal princess. She suggested an alkaline-based diet, and that's what kind of got me on the path to thinking about food as like food-based supplements that have medicinal value to help ensure healing. And on top of that, I was doing my physical therapy every day. I mean, just everything that I had within my power to help influence. I was not only doing it, I was going above and beyond. And I mean, one of the greatest quotes that really helped me at that time was "Fault is in the past." It still helps me to this day. Fault is in the past. Responsibility is in the future. So it's like it's not about what happens to me. People have actually been through way worse. I put it in perspective. So and you can either be a victim or you can rise above it. So that's what I've done. I've through stubborn determination and just sheer will to not become a victim. I have friends that have dealt with substance abuse issues, and there's many people who get trapped in that type of stuff after an injury. And thankfully, I was able to break that cycle. But I didn't do it without help, and it wasn't by accident. It was also, I was set up for success in the environment I was in. I had that community of friends that supported me. I was attacking my physical therapy every day. And the injury actually happened in the Middle East, so they have an entirely different mindset and use when it comes to pharmaceutical, narcotics, medication. Like, I never even received morphine. I received Tramadol, which is like really a powerful Tylenol. Right. And I had to beg literally was begging doctors for more medication, but suffering in that pain taught me a lot. And you learn patience and empathy and forgiveness, and you learn and become a better person by not only experiencing that pain, but digesting it and processing it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck nowadays, is because under the influence of narcotics or any mind-altering substances, you can very easily be living in that fog and never truly process that trauma to get to the other side of it. And then that trauma will own you instead of you owning that trauma and, using it as a catalyst for growth rather than a hindrance of your life forever.
It's interesting, too, because one of the things I've always heard about addiction and that kind of abuse is right diagnosis, wrong prescription. It's not a matter of people just kind of picking it up for no reason. So many people kind of fill holes in their heart, holes in their well-being and their physical approach to life in an attempt to kind of ameliorate pain or emotional distress. They're right, something is wrong. It's just their solutions aren't the proper ones. So in the midst of all of this, you realize that every time you do a jump, it's doing more damage. So you do this thing that I am incredibly fascinated with, the idea of realizing that the thing you love is no longer something you can do for your own well-being, but then to kind of figure out the core passion of what it is you're trying to do. And with that in mind, I want to let people know you can go to flockgoods.com to find out what's going on there and get all the stories on the blog and the information about this. But you talk about the process of rechanneling passion in another direction while keeping the core of what it is that drives you.
I think refinding that passion was definitely not easy. I mean, I used skydiving as that carrot to dangle in front of myself as motivation, and I was willing to put further damage to my body physically to heal myself mentally. And I did that. I did about 900 tandem skydives where I take passengers after breaking my neck, and another 150 AFF jumps after, to teach someone to become a skydiver after the injury, all knowing that my time was limited. But finding a new purpose for me was very important. And, getting back what I had lost was also important. So once I had done that, it's like, okay, I checked that box. But now all of a sudden, that carrot that I used to dangle in front of myself, now I have to accept and swallow the pill once again that this sport is not going to be mine anymore. I have to set this down. So Flock Good came to fruition organically through that process. The physical fitness and mental health and nutrition and recovery, all of the valuable lessons that I learned through that recovery process, I felt that I had knowledge that I can share with others, that can help other people that have been through similar situations or been through any sort of trauma. I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all solution or, like a Band-Aid solution. I'm a believer in trying to attack your problems from every angle that you have at your disposal. So I decided to go into business in 2018. The injury happened actually July 23rd, 2014. So this is 4 years later that now fast forward, I moved to California. Being exposed to other holistic alternatives, I decided this is something that I can really make a difference. And some of the things I saw going on within the industries, I wasn't a fan of. So I knew I could do better. I knew I could provide access to people and teach, and not just say, hey, take these nutraceuticals and it's gonna fix all your problems. And no, attack your problems with using this framework and enhance your human experience by accentuating these efforts with our holistic alternatives. It's not the other way around. And that's really pivotal to, I think, controlling expectations overall for humans. Like we have to, whatever it is that we want, whether we want to be pain-free or we want to persevere over our traumas or we want to go on a date with a cute girl or guy or whatever, like you have to take logical steps and work towards that goal. Like you can't just wish and hope and pray. Like you have to actually do stuff every day. Will Smith has a great quote. I took him in the hospital, so I use it all the time. One brick a day and eventually have a wall. And it's so true. Like little by little, I founded Flock Goods in 2018 and we started making products in our kitchen, and it's progressed so much from there. And now we're relocated in Maine, and it's just a beautiful place to be. And for me, this chapter in my life, this is the best fitting place that I could have chosen. I was fortunate to have an RV that I've built, and I've been fortunate to be all over the country. So I've seen, the grass is greener on the other side. And it was time to really do something and put roots down. Like I started Flock Goods. I was in San Diego. It was never forever home. I'm from New England. So I literally flocked it back to New England, and now we're putting roots down here. So it's made all the difference, like having roots and purpose and being able to affect positive change in people's lives. And that's like, I can go get a job, and that's something that has always been on the back of my mind, but I've pretty much put my back against the wall and put myself in a corner because the success of my company, Flock Goods, is contingent upon my own personal development. And that's the motivator that I use, is that pressure, rather than I thrive in that pressure as a skydiver, like those high pressure situations. That is something I've learned, to be comfortable in that controlled chaos. So I guess that's kind of why I do what I do, rather than kind of taking maybe a little bit easier route. I make it hard on myself in the good way. So I hope.
And that's the other thing, too. You talk about the idea of having, you literally and figuratively one brick at a time because you actually built that RV yourself. I did want to kind of set this up as we head into the break. I'm going to ask you to stick around for about 10 minutes after the break so we can kind of get to a few more details here. And I'll give you some time to answer this by asking it in long form so when we come back you have a way to kind of think about it. So much of the time, you talk about that one brick at a time that Will Smith told you about. People often put off the thing that they want to do or put their passion on hold, and then they look back and realize they have 3 or 4 years accumulated of not having worked towards that goal, which of course makes them impatient and makes it very, very hard for them to go to a place of patience where whatever it is they want is still 3, 4, 5 years away. You have experience both in getting ready to become somebody who jumps out of airplanes and then somebody who actually enacts a recovery physically and then somebody who builds a company with kind of understanding that sort of brick-by-brick patience. When we get a chance to kind of dig into this, the idea is I'd love to kind of get some thoughts about the idea of reinvention, but also not just reinvention, because often reinvention comes in the wake of loss. I mean, so much of what we talked about this morning is that you have an incredible life that took you a long time to build. You lose that in the blink of an eye. You rebuild it, lose it again, and then have to rebuild a third time. So any kind of insight you can give our listeners on how one goes about dealing with the grief and the loss while simultaneously moving forward would be helpful. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, it does. And do you want me to touch on that now? Did you want to wait?
Just for a minute or so, and we'll set up and go into more detail with that. But that's kind of the direction I think we should head after the break, and that would make the most sense to me. I do have a question for you, though. How old's your dog? I have to ask this question.
He's almost 2. He's almost 2.
And we've talked about this in the past on this show. So many of our listeners have animals as well. Does having a pet actually help people in recovery, but also does it help people in regards to kind of finding that Zen place, I guess is the best way to describe it? Is it part of the holistic approach? Would you recommend people to get a pet or so? Do you find that a helpful way to kind of remind you of how important patience is and just living in the moment?
So much so. Everything that you just said, and in addition, I'd add to that as well. He's made me more loving. He's made me more patient. He's made me a better leader. And he's a great co-pilot. I mean, I'm basically his plus one wherever I go. So he's great dog. I mean, I couldn't say enough good things. So yeah, I recommend everyone have an animal to take care of. And also, having the dog is, if I'm too busy to take care of him, then I'm too busy, because I need to make sure that, twice a day, 3 times a day, that I'm taking a break from work and I'm, throwing the ball outside and, for him, but also I'm, outside in the sun and taking a little break from work and stretching my legs. And I think that's really important to make sure you get that time in. So he's definitely an added insurance to make sure that I do take that time. And to touch on what you mentioned, as far as kind of finding that new purpose and having that trauma used or your passion used as a catalyst, it's really, for me, it was tapping into that human aggression, right? And you can wallow in self-pity and direct that aggression and anger and desperation towards yourself. Or you can use it as your fire, use it as your fuel, and
Matt,
get after it. And
that's it right there. We're going to take a quick break, come back. It's a great place to end it and to begin again when we come back with Matt Gagne.
Back to the Dave Nemo Show.
Yep, he was internally decapitated in a car crash that broke his neck in 10 places. It actually jeopardized his return to his beloved skydiving, but he decided to make lemons out of lemonade and used the time in his recovery and an inventory of both his emotional and physical health to create his company, Flock Goods. You can find out about them at flockgoods.com, flockgoods.com. Matt Gagne is joining us again, gave us some extra time. We really appreciate that. Are you in Maine right now?
I am. I'm in Berwick, Maine, southern.
And by the way, what is the name of the dog?
His name's Malik.
Malik.
He was a rescue, and ironically, the name means king or owner in Arabic. And it was just coincidence. Actually, I lived in the Middle East for 3.5 years.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. So we were talking when we last left our two intrepid divers into the action. We were talking about the idea of how one deals with that the process of reinvention always comes after something is either ended or something has run its course, which of course leads to a person to an area of grief, which means while they're reinventing themselves, they often are mitigating the causes of grief or loss or pain or anguish. Can you give our listeners some advice on how one deals with that while at the same time moving forward?
I think acceptance is the key, and it's a process, because resentment is a real human emotion that we all have within us. But acceptance, patience, and finding a new purpose to fully engulf yourself in, I think is really, really key. Whether it's one thing or multiple things, but trying to find the overlap in whatever it is that you did before, and take some of those elements and try to instill them or find them in new hobbies.
So it's kind of like finding the old purpose inside the new objective. Is that fair?
100%. And the big thing with my company, so I named my company Flock. So Flock Goods, but Flock means community and movement. And those were two very integral aspects of the sport of skydiving that I had lost, really. I mean, skydiving was number one hobby. It was also my occupation. It's what all my friends did. So it was really, not an easy road to find a new thing and find a new passion. But that's why I essentially took matters into my own hands and went into business. And now every Monday morning I wake up like it's game day. And I'm charged and I'm ready to attack my week and my to-do list. And I get excited about these conversations and being able to talk to people the way I do on a daily basis now. I get charged up, very similar to how I would get charged up after a skydive. I actually, funny enough, I was almost more fearful to public speak than I was to skydive for the first time. But I know that through getting to the level in skydiving that I did and just becoming a licensed skydiver at all really taught me a lot about facing my own fears and insecurities and, going after and chasing my dreams. So I just knew in my heart that I wasn't going to be truly happy until I gave it a good effort, like all in. Like that's why I live in an RV, because it was now I could go get a comfortable place somewhere, but now I'm very comfortable where I am, and it gives me mobility. But it's the type of thing that living below your means is what enables me to pursue that dream. It's not easy to go into business for yourself. I didn't have any financial help. I didn't have a GoFundMe page. I never even got an insurance settlement because this happened in the Middle East. So it was bootstrap, and that was just really all part of my psyche that I adopted just organically for survival. And I relate being in business to being a feral animal. I know a lot of truckers listening are independent contractors as well, or even if you're not. Like it's important to, if you're going to do something, do it well and take pride in what you do. And that's, for me, this was my means and way to go about doing that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. The idea that once you kind of make a commitment to do this stuff, you've almost got to take the enjoyment and the joy in what it is you're doing. The idea people live to work or work to live, but you've got to somehow bridge the gap on that when you're doing your own business, when you're actually acting as an owner operator, an independent contractor driver. Is that you've got to actually take a joy in the act itself, because so much of what you're doing is you're doing that all the time. Because if you don't, somebody once told me that one of the great things about actually switching over from being an owner operator to being a carrier driver is that when they went to sleep on Saturday night, they weren't thinking about balancing their books anymore. But when you make a decision to do something like Flock Goods, you actually have to kind of always think about it. So you need to find the joy in every moment of it, or it's going to make you crazy, isn't it?
100%. And having outlets, and just making sure I put time in my day for myself as well. I exercise regularly. And I do a lot of different things to help alleviate stress, alleviate pain, anxiety, and that overall is, everything that I preach in marketing for my business, I actually practice and do myself. So in this process of pursuing business, I'm simultaneously pursuing self-mastery, and it's just continually trying to level up. Like, no matter what you're doing in life, you stay stagnant, you stop getting enthusiastic about things. When you have a goal and you have, something you're working towards, it's really crucial to your overall happiness. And having an ultimate, carrot, if you will, philosophical carrot, we all need something to help motivate us. Like, why am I getting up? Why am I doing this? If it's just to pay your bills, burnout is inevitably going to set in. So whatever it is, for me now, I'm focused on, building a home and being a part of a community, being able to establish and grow with a family, and all of these things. So whatever you're doing, even if you don't like what you're doing, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, thinking about why you're doing it. Ultimately, think about the bigger picture. It's macro versus micro. You're like your daily tasks. Maybe sometimes some of the daily tasks, like, balancing my books, which is on my list for today. It's funny you said that. Things like that. Honestly, yeah, it's not. Those aren't the fun aspects, but there's so many aspects that are rewarding. And there's other things within my life, outside of work, that keep me inspired and keep me fired up and keep the fun in my life. And that's important as well. All work and no play makes you a dull boy.
Matt Gagne has joined us this morning. Watch this. If you go to flockgoods.com, you can fuel your ideas, you can fuel your passion, you can transform your world. We really appreciate you sharing with us how you transformed yours. Best of luck. And once again, guys, go to flockgoods.com and find out about a holistic approach to both getting better or continuing on a road to success. Thank you so much, Matt. You're welcome back anytime, no matter what adventure you're getting yourself into, okay?
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me, and I hope you have a great flocking day.
Thank you, sir. And flock you too. Absolutely. Matt Gagne, thank you so much for